Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans, one Stabby chaos coordinator, and one chief shenanigator, geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guests introduce themselves to our listeners and viewers at home. So first, we're going to start with Bill, and I'm not even sure how to pronounce that last name, but you can do it for me.
McCushton.
Okay, I'll get that right someday.
He promises, really.
Yourself?
What's funny is that even with my actual name, no one ever, even after I tell them how to say it, they wouldn't even say it right. And it's got to the point where I'm like, are any of you even trying? I am persecuted, and that is my story. That is how I am a victim in today's day and age.
All right, Mr. McLewis-Dean.
Go on, introduce yourself. Besides your persecution for our weird last name that you unfortunately were saddled with at birth.
Unfortunately. I'm not going to spurg about this. I'm going to quell the urge to spurg about this.
It's a solid name. It's a solid name.
I am Bill McCushton. I do write. I currently have an ongoing sci-fi pulp over on Substack that is called Zorn. You can find it at zorn.substack.com. Zulu, Omega, Romeo, November, Echo is how you spell Zorn.
Okay. Next, we have Miss Jana S. Brown, who sometimes cosplays as her many other personalities.
Oh, yes, my many, many other personalities. I keep coming up with new ones, and I'm trying to, reel it in, just try to keep hold of it. But I am Jana S. Brown. I write under the pen name Jenna Ray, and that's where most of the speculative stuff goes. The tagline is, we write the weird and the wonderful, sometimes with smoochies. So I'm excited, even though I don't know that Calvin or Hobbes, well, Calvin doesn't want us talking about smoochies, but Hobbes certainly does. He has a whole thing going on there, which I'm sure we'll get to. But I write the weird and the wonderful, and I'm having a good time. I had ice cream before the show, so the sugar rush is hitting.
I've got a nice caramel iced coffee, so I'm doing good too.
Yum.
All right, next we have Mr. J.C. Chambers III.
Hey, everybody. I'm JC. Already said my last name. I write action-packed science fiction and fantasy. Lots of violence, lots of swearing, lots of blood, lots of gore, but there's usually a really solid, hopeful central thread. My main claim to fame is Benragesh, 3 books in one, and incidentally, each copy comes with comic art. It's available on Amazon. And then I'm currently uploading a serial, a progression fantasy serial, to Royal Road called Dead Men Dungeoneers. And it's a mix of inspiration from real life Japan mixed with some video game elements and just lots of fun and violence and action and shenanigans. It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Okay. And finally, we have the lovely war mistress herself, Miss Melissa McShane.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa McShane. I'm coming to you from India, where it is early morning, and it's going to be a beautiful day. We are coming to the end of the monsoon season, so the weather is great. And I am a writer of fantasy of all different flavors, including the lit RPG series War Master, not War Hamster. Thank you, JR. And I am excited to be here to talk about Calvin and Hobbes.
So this episode will be airing on the 8th, and I just want you to know in 8 more days from when you listen to this episode, assuming you're not a late person, we will have a release of the War Hamster anthology in question. Mm-hmm. So actually, technically 7 days. My math ain't mathing because it's released on the 15th.
Okay.
So it should be fun. So go check that out, and you can hear all the crazy stories that we told about war hamsters, inspired by War Masters. All right. So normally we had fun doing it. So although Jana did make me take out all my cuss words,
I'm like that.
I'm not over it yet, Jana.
I know. It's
You're
all
going to
right.
be bitter for a while.
We'll just keep drawing on. It's okay. Sooner or later, you'll get over yourself.
So normally, dear listener, we would do the religion questions, but after much consideration, we've decided that doesn't really work as well for panel chats. Some of them you can do themed ones for, but not all of them lend themselves to that. So since it's airing on September 8th and summer 2025 is officially over, how did you celebrate the end of the heat waves, assuming that it's over for you already? Because I know India weather is off from ours.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, how'd you celebrate the ending of the winter or the summer season?
I mowed my lawn. Does that count?
Absolutely. Did you do it wearing New Balance sneakers like a good man?
No.
What? It's like required. It is in the handbook.
Oh, is that what that is? I was using it to hold the door open.
Oh my goodness, sir! It's on page 27.
Wow.
Jeez, Chambers, we're not going to tell anybody. All right, it's going to be our little secret for him. He'll have time to read it later. All right, so you mowed your lawn. Cool. That's what happens when you grow up. Sometimes the fun just disappears. All right, what about you, Jana? How'd you celebrate the ending of the summer now that kids are all back in school?
Oh, it's so nice to have the kids back in school. I love having her home, but also it's really, really nice when they go off. And actually in Utah right now, we got a monsoon pattern set up finally. And it means that it went from being scorching hot to days in the 60s and 70s with mild rain. And I love it. And it won't last. This will go very, very, very quickly. But for right now, it's really, really pleasant. And so I opened all of the windows in the house and watched the cats go absolutely crazy because they could see things beyond the windows. They could smell them through the open windows, but they still can't get past the screens. So I tortured the cats for a while, and then we sat there and we listened to the rain, and I broke out my favorite sweater. So it's all good. We're heading into my very favorite time of year. I love the fall.
Okay, so there's the old joke that the weather went from 90 to 65 like it's all state trooper. That is not true where I'm at yet, but I'm assuming that's true for you guys then.
That is totally the way that Utah works, is that we'll get a snap now, then it'll get a little bit warmer for a little while, and then it will truly settle in. And my husband says you can tell when that happens because you walk outside and it smells like football season. And he says, I haven't smelled it just yet, but with this latest cold snap, we're probably really close to it smelling like football season.
I mean, the one good side of hitting my 40s after I've been blown up as many times as I has, I can now predict the weather in my bones. So there's that. I can tell you when it's going to rain.
Yeah,
now,
it's totally a thing.
When you guys get rain in Utah, like I know parts of Texas, for instance, when it rains, they get flash flood issues because it's the ground just can't soak it up quick enough. Is that an issue in Utah since you're desert-y as well?
Yes.
Sometimes.
Well, kind of. So like right now, because we've been in so much drought, the ground itself is very, very, very dry. And so it's soaking up a lot of that. And we want that to happen before we get winter snowpack. And don't get me into it because I did huge studies on the whole water situation in Utah. This was part of how I got through school. But so right now it sucks up a lot of it. The biggest problem with flash flooding is in the south. You get the slot canyons and things like that down in the Red Rocks, and that you'll get a lot of water really quick. It gets funneled into the washes, and then you get in trouble. Up here, the problem that'll happen is if you get a downpour in a very limited area very quick, then we can definitely get flash flooding. But overall, it's just too dry. So we get yes and no, depending on where you're at.
The biggest danger of flooding that Utah gets is when it snows too much during the winter and then it heats up really fast in the spring.
Yeah. We see a lot of that. Our house almost flooded through thunderstorms about 2 years ago because the rain came down faster than they could funnel it away. The retention ponds were full, and we watched it come for the house. But that only happens every couple of years.
Yeah,
I have a water source behind my house, and I definitely appreciate my great grandma's old expression, "God willing, and the creek don't rise." I didn't understand it until I watched during Hurricane Matthew the water get higher and higher and higher, and I'm sitting there with my coffee, like, "All right, great grandma, I get it now. I get it now."
Yeah, nothing like watching the water come up your driveway, and you're going, "I really hope that stops before it gets to the house."
Yeah, it's one of those times where you as you grow up, you realize that your forefathers had a lot more intelligence than we give them credit for. They sometimes knew some things. But yeah, that's interesting because you hear I know just because I did some research for a short story that the deserts in that region, if there weren't human intervention, a lot of it would reunify into one larger desert.
Yeah.
Human intervention has changed the weather to a degree. Like for instance, all the people that go to Vegas, which is a really cool study they did. All the people flying into Vegas that use the bathroom on the plane, that gets dumped by the plane in the air. It adds to the moisture. When they get there, they drink a lot of water. They use the bathroom. That gets into the moisture cycle. And so there's more greenery there now than there has been because we keep bringing it and cutting it. And if humans just went away from that region, or like the Hoover Dam fails or whatever, there's a lot of conditions that can cause it. All of that reverts to natural settings.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's different kinds of desert because down there you get a lot more sandstone and all that kind of stuff. Up here, you've got the Great Basin and it's full of sagebrush. And then you get even further north and we have mountains. So we actually are a cold desert and we get snow.
So is it truly a
that makes a
desert,
difference, too.
or are you a tundra?
It's
No,
a
we're
desert.
cold.
No.
It's called a cold desert based on the amount of precipitation we get in any given year.
Yeah.
So you come for the speculative fiction and you stay for the geography lessons. There you go, people.
Yeah, see, JC used to live here. Melissa lives here when she's not in India. I live here. We've been here for a long time, and yeah, the precipitation has changed greatly over the years. We've had years where we did flood out absolutely everything in the spring thaw.
Yeah,
I
a couple
think that-
years ago, I helped build sandbags.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and in the 80s, it flooded everything. We had a couple of really, really, really wet years, and everything flooded. But that's why we have reservoirs and dams and all these things, because it's definitely a very different landscape for human intervention than it used to be.
But then
Or-
2 weeks
or than it
ago,
might be again.
2 weeks ago, we had a forest fire up the canyon from where we're at. Just
Wow.
like you could see the flames from my front porch.
Yikes.
Oh, wow.
Having
So-
filled sandbags, I can tell you that does suck. And one of the times we got in trouble, so they made us fill them. And then as soon as you get the satisfaction of seeing the pile you filled, they make you dump them out and do it all over again. Just so you couldn't get that sense of accomplishment. Gotta love you.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
the military.
Uh-huh.
So how did you celebrate the ending of the summer, JC?
I've got Miss Renfro's Ghost Pepper Salsa.
Oh,
I've got tortilla chips, and I'll probably put Kaiju number 8 on. But actually, funny story about this. This is just the spiciest salsa that you can find at the grocery store, but it's nowhere near spicy enough. So I might have to go to like specialty stores and get something that's spicier.
so fun fact, if you can survive that salsa, you were almost halfway ready to be able to try eating at Taco Bell and keep your intestines intact.
Oh, no amount of spice will prepare you for Taco Bell. It just turns your anus into a fire hydrant.
That's because it's not real meat. But I do know Taco Bell is the only restaurant that survives the Great Restaurant Wars.
That is true. Verifiable fact from the iconic documentary Demolition Man.
Absolutely. And rat burgers are apparently delicious. Haven't tried them yet, but just in case you're wondering. And maybe one day they will enlighten us about the 3 seashells.
I don't want to know about the 3 seashells.
Inquiring minds, man. Or
No,
inquiring
I don't think this is an inquiry anyone wants to go down.
So Chambers, how did you get into the spicy? Have you always liked spicy food, or is that something you developed later?
No, since I was a kid, I remember trying out Diablo sauce. Wasn't a thing when I was a kid. It was just fire sauce, and I was like, oh, that's not actually very spicy. And then the first time I had Cholulas, I put too much on my taco and I couldn't finish it. I felt really dumb. I think it was like 10 or 11. But after that, I just kept eating spicier and spicier. When I was 19, I spent 2 years in Thailand. And Thailand is notoriously spicy food. But what's ironic is I actually came back to the U.S. after 2 years, and my spice tolerance was lower than it was before I went to Thailand. And now, the thing for me is like, I don't necessarily just eat spice to eat spice. I can handle spicy, so I go higher, and it tastes good. There is a certain point where it gets too spicy and it's not fun anymore, but it's really rare for me to hit that these days.
I know growing up, my sisters used to joke that my taste buds were so bland I was destined to marry an English woman. I did not marry an English woman, but I have increased to the point where sometimes I add ketchup. See, because I'm classic. I enjoy the flavors. All right, lastly, Melissa, how did you sell? Well, is it even the end of summer for you?
It's not. Summer is about a 6-week period from April to mid-May. And then we have the monsoons, and then there's a shorter warm period and then a short monsoon. So this time of year is actually the Onam celebration, which is a Hindu festival that everybody in Kerala celebrates, regardless of religion. It is the biggest holiday. There's special clothes you wear, there's special foods you eat, there's games, there's parties. Companies will, like, my husband used to work in, they've moved, they have a new office location, but their previous office location, the companies would arrange who would take time off so that it wasn't like everybody going at the same time to do this celebration, because everybody was celebrating. And so my daughter just had her first Onam celebration at her school, and she's at university here. And they play funny games, and it's just my husband's company is doing these different games. They've divided us into teams, and I'm like the only white person on our team. All the other white people went to the other team, and we won the puzzle building because I am a master jigsaw puzzler, and so my team won, and I was very proud of that. But they are super competitive here. Oh my gosh, everything is a competition. I thought Texas was bad, but Indians are just the worst. And it's fun because there's no malice. Nobody gets mad, although you'd think they would be, because they get very vocal about, infractions of rules and things. But it's all in fun. And so we're literally celebrating this end of monsoon is with Onam. So that's what I'm doing.
All right. So we've talked about the Pepsi supremacy there that you are working single-handedly to overcome.
Yes.
But what about the food? Having eaten Indian food here, how does it compare to what we eat here as, quote, Indian food versus what they actually eat?
Well, okay. So in the first place, what we get in the U.S. is usually northern Indian food. I'm in southern India. And the food is very different. You will see restaurants saying they're North Indian restaurants or South Indian restaurants. They will actually say that they're, or they'll also refer to it as traditional versus Western food. So you go to a traditional restaurant, and the food is, in many ways, it's more casual because this is what they eat. It's not like a special thing like in the U.S. You're going out of your way to go to an Indian restaurant, and here this is just the default. So the food is really good, but where I live, southern India is much more. It's more cosmopolitan than the north, and my southern Indian friends tell me that frequently, that this is the place to live. I mean, it's beautiful for one thing, but you have a wide variety of cultures here. There's religious tolerance because it's pretty much evenly divided between the Catholics, the Hindus, and the Muslims, and it reflects in the food that you get. You can get Italian food. You can get European food. There's a lot of a growing trend in East Asian food, although that's been more recent than some of the other imports. But the food is amazing. I don't love to cook, and it's so cheap here. We can afford to eat out, and we eat out, and we live like kings. It's astonishing. So I am in love with Southern Indian food. They have this food called parota, which is a bread, and it's basically a long string of yeast bread that they coil up and fry. So it's this long strand of buttery goodness, and it is incredible. It's so good. And every time I tell, like I was telling a dietitian about it, and I said, I know it's bad for you. She said, I know, but it's so delicious. And so even she would admit, don't eat a ton of Perota, but man, you're going to love it when you do. So it's been interesting going back to the U.S. And comparing. It becomes easy to see who's actually bought grandma's recipe from India and who is just sort of feeding Americans what they think they want to eat.
I know you mentioned fried food, and I know the Texans in the audience are like needing a moment alone in their bunk after hearing about fried food. But I'm told there are some people that at the Texas State Fair, they earn their entire yearly salary on that one week at the fair selling food. Although I imagine they work their butts off to get it for that weekend because they're selling a whole lot. One of the cool things, so when I deployed my junior year, I came back, I took some classes that were mostly for the football players, which means they weren't that academically challenging, but they fit the requirements. And one of the things we took was the history of food, which was an excuse to go to a lot of restaurants as academic research. But we realized that a lot of what we think of in America as like ethnic food is actually their festival food. And the professor explained it would be the equivalent of them thinking we had Thanksgiving dinner every meal.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Our view of what they eat is distorted. And that's why I was curious.
Oh, yeah. Well, on the menu, I mean, now that I know what to look for, Indian food is basically lowest common denominator. So we don't get, in the U.S., we don't get festival food from India. At least not from Southern India. I've never seen a Southern Indian restaurant in the U.S. I'm sure they have them, but it's not as common because most of the people who are coming from India to do that are most of the populations from the north. So like the Onam meal, the sadhya, is served on a banana leaf, and it's vegetarian, and it's like 13 little samples of dishes with a big bowl of rice and, well, a heap of rice. There's no bowl; it's on the banana leaf. And they wouldn't do that in a restaurant. For one thing, you're expected to eat with your fingers. And I was talking to an Indian friend, and he's like, yeah, I went back to the U.S. and I was going to eat with my fingers, but they made me not, even though that's how I would eat it. That's how you eat the food. And so yeah, it's not so much. You really are getting what the common person eats in general. I mean, they have fancier dishes too in the Indian restaurants in the U.S., but aloo gobi is pretty bog standard Indian food, which is delicious. I love aloo gobi.
My favorite is the chicken tikka masala, but I'm told that's not even Indian. It was invented by a Pakistani living in Scotland.
Yeah.
There's a lot of parallels between what Melissa is saying about Indian food in the U.S. and Thai food in the U.S. A lot of what you'll find in restaurants in the U.S. is generally what they eat in Thailand, although oftentimes it's heavily Americanized for white people who can't handle spicy. But
we also add a lot more sugar to our foods to sweeten things than the rest of the world does.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, when you go to Thailand, they're eating a lot of the same stuff that you'll find in restaurants here. It's just dirt cheap because it's just their food. It's not anything special. And they have ways to like spruce it up, and so a masaman that you'll eat on the daily can be very different from a masaman that you eat for a really nice meal, depending on like what ingredients they throw in. And yeah, no, none of that is their festival food. Their festival food is usually different. So yeah.
Now, what parts of Thailand were you in? Were you in like one of the major cities there, or were you in the more rural?
I spent most of my time in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
I spent a few months in about an hour north of Bangkok in a city called Ayutthaya, which isn't quite the middle of nowhere. A lot of fun. Ancient capital of Thailand. Used to be called the City of Gold until the Burmese robbed it. Then after that, I went up to northeast Thailand and part of the Isan. And the best way to understand it is the Isan is the most redneck place on earth. Just with Asians instead of white people. And I had a lot of fun. They speak like a mixture of Lao and Thai there. That's really hard to understand for people who speak either language. And it's and the food's fantastic. Down in Bangkok, they'll and then I spent some time up in the Northwest, had a great time there. I was in a town where they had horse-drawn carriages,
Cool.
which is really weird because that's not something you usually expect to see in Thailand. And then I spent a couple months down in Bangkok where I was in the heart of the city. In Bangkok, they'll eat with a fork and a spoon, but up in the Isan, they'll usually eat with their hands a lot of food. So,
Neat. All right. Well, we're going to pause for a moment while we shamelessly shill for the man, and then we're going to jump right into talking about the topic that brought us here. So we're going to pause for a moment. Boom!
Alien Days is a multi-author anthology with thrilling tales of aliens, invasions, artificial intelligence, friendship, deceit, and extinction. This combination of stories makes it a must-read for science fiction short story fans. This anthology features Nebula and Dragon Award nominees, Amazon bestsellers and award winners, alongside rising stars in the science fiction genre. Let the authors take you on adventures through dystopian worlds and far-flung planets that will stretch your imagination. Welcome to Alien Days.
All right. Thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude. And now we're going to talk about the topic that brought us here, the one and only Calvin and Hobbes. So first off, Jana, you suggested the topic. So what is it about Calvin and Hobbes that you dig so much? And while you answer that question, I'm going to throw up some images from Calvin and Hobbes. For anyone watching who doesn't know what we're talking about, I think when you see these pictures, it's going to be like, oh, okay.
Yes, it's going to be obvious. So, no, I did suggest this because this is kind of one of the ultimate comics when it comes to diving into imagination. There are so many amazing speculative questions here about the nature of Calvin and Hobbes, about whether or not the tiger is a figment of his imagination. Does it really come to life? And you look at the adventures, and he travels through time, and he transmogrifies things. He's Spaceman Zip at one point, Tracer Bullet. I just love the way that this is all about connecting with the imagination. And one of the things I really love about it is that it really is timeless. Melissa and I were talking about this at one point, that as you go through, there's occasionally little hints that show that these were drawn between about 1985 and 1995, I think was when it was in syndication. I may be getting that slightly wrong, but it's about that time period. So occasionally you'll see things like a phone that actually still has a cord on it, things like that. But otherwise, it really is timeless. The problems that he runs into, the way that they work through arguments, the interactions with the school bully, with the girl, with his parents, they're so timeless because they're just a reflection of the way that people think. And when we write speculative fiction, when we read speculative fiction, a lot of what we're looking for is still grounded in these kinds of relationships. We like reading things more where we can say, oh, yes, this is very human because I can understand the alien with the tummy ache, because who doesn't understand that Hobbes really, really wants a tuna sandwich pretty much all the time? So that was part of what I loved about it. And raising kids, this was one of the things that I connected with my children over. We're reading these comics and laughing about them and saying, oh, yeah, you sometimes do that. And them going, well, yeah, sometimes you sound like his mom. And it's like, yeah, you're right. Okay, fine. So I thought we should talk about this because it's just so quintessentially imagination and what does it mean to be a people.
These skates that he's wearing in this picture, if you look, are very 1980s because inline skating hadn't made a big play yet. It
wasn't a thing yet.
Right.
And so everybody skated, did the four. And so you got the ones that were you could actually tie around regular shoes were still an option. Mm-hmm. Although less common because the popular actual booted ones, but I mean, they were possible.
You can still get them, yeah.
Yeah, you can still get them because I remember when I was really little, I had some of those. Those were kind of how you got starter skates, were the ones that just tied around existing shoes. Mm-hmm. So, what about everyone else? So, like, I remember reading Calvin and Hobbes because it was in the Daily Sundays, right? Like, they were the little strips. But what about the rest of you? Start with you, Bill. Like, where did you first find Calvin and Hobbes?
So, my grandparents loved Calvin and Hobbes. My grandfather actually made one kid's day once when he was working as a bus driver because the kid came in with the spaceman spiff, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Get up.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
My grandfather immediately got the reference, and it just made the kid's day. And they had the complete Calvin and Hobbes collection. I've been meaning to get the complete Calvin and Hobbes collection.
It's awesome.
But as you can see, my book finances went to other things
Hmm.
in the time since then. It's still on the list to get because I'd like to actually sit down and go through all of it. I did read some of what they had when during a time period when my folks and I were having to live with them, and it is absolutely charming.
Very wholesome.
100% wholesome. It also, and I don't know, this tends to happen with comedies. I never quite understood why, but like a lot of great sort of comedic works, it just sort of tapped into something important, as you said, Jana. It taps into the importance of the imagination. And even that childlike wonder, and that's something that gets referenced in other places, but I'm going to shut up now so everyone else can say their piece on where they know Calvin and Hobbes.
Melissa.
Oh, I started reading Calvin and Hobbes when it was in the newspaper many years ago. I was a young adult at the time, and so I kind of was caught between the age of Calvin and his imagination and his parents. And so as I'm heading into parenthood myself, I enjoyed the Calvin and Hobbes comics because I could see them from both sides. And I sympathized with his parents, although I never had a child as rambunctious as Calvin, fortunately. But my husband always wanted to be Calvin's dad, and he loved the strips that were about Calvin's dad explaining mysteries of the universe, like how the moon is really only the size of a quarter, and well, I forget. There's another one. I forget what his favorite one is, but anyway. So I recently, like last year, it couldn't have been last year. Anyway, fairly recently, reread as many of the collections as I had, and then went and bought the ones that I was missing. I don't have the complete one because I have small children, and I wanted to be able to share with them without worrying that they were going to ruin it. So, or I had small children at the time. My children are all grown now and can be trusted not to spit on the pages. But
Are we sure?
I'm pretty
Mostly.
sure they know how I feel about my library pictured behind me.
So they're mostly housebroken. Good to know.
Yes, they are mostly housebroken, but that collection is in my sights because
Now-
I want to, I want to experience it in as many ways as possible because I love everything about it.
Is this collection like coffee table style book, or is it just literally just like encyclopedic almost?
Yeah, they made a Jana, you've got it.
It's a giant set of hardbacks, and it's
Yeah.
pulled into a collector's edition, a very literal box set. So
Okay.
Yeah.
I should have grabbed it from downstairs, but I didn't. But it's this
Mhm.
giant box set, and they're hardbound books, and each one is a certain number of collections all pulled together. And then it includes some things like when they did the 10th anniversary book, Bill Watterson put in a whole bunch of commentary about what the different strips were and why he wrote them this way. And so some of that same commentary also is part of the great big collection. And the
Yeah.
collection is amazing. I still like having some of the individual ones too, just because the collector's edition is huge. And sometimes I want to sit in bed and read something that's soft and squishy, and I don't worry so much about spines and other things. So I have my whole collection in softback, and then I have the collector's editions, and those are the ones that we're a little bit nicer with because they're really huge. But they have great
Right.
commentary in them and all these things that's background information on why he did this or why he did that. But they're big hardbacks, and I love them.
So it's a beautiful set, but to be able to handle it, like Jana says, the softbound ones are just so much more convenient, and they're more forgiving of wanting to just sit and read. So I tried to get as complete a collection as I could, alternating between the original compilations and then the treasury volumes that have two books in one. So like the Essential Calvin and Hobbes has Calvin and Hobbes and Something Under the Bed is Drooling, and so I have kind of a mix of those. But I went and got as many of those as I could, and then I just read them all, and it was extremely satisfying. Still is, years later.
Okay. What about you, Jana? Did you say where you first found it? You talked about why you picked it.
Oh, so very first finding it was not too many years after it came out. We did a raid on the bookstore and we were looking for new things, and it was like, oh, look, new comic, I haven't seen this. And then I think it was my roommate at the time went, no, this is that one comic that was in the Sunday paper. And so we argued about it for a while and then bought it. And I think it was, I'm going to get it wrong. All the titles are so cool, and I get them mixed up in my head as to which came in which order. But so we bought the first one and went, yes, that's totally the thing from the Sunday paper. And so then we had to go and rustle up a whole bunch of Sunday papers to read back for things that weren't in the book. And so then I followed in the Sunday papers, and as soon as the collections came out, kept buying them. And I have multiple copies of things because I have all the essential collections. I have the 10th anniversary. I have the individual ones, and then I have the big boxed ones because I have a problem. But it's a problem I'm not sad about. So, but yeah, so it was somewhere there in the probably early 90s that I found it. So it had been in syndication for a while first before we ran into that first collected one. And then that sent us searching for where were these in the paper and going back to the older ones.
Yeah, I just looked. So it was ran from 1985 to 1995.
Yeah, so this would have been early 90s that I found it, and then we went back and read everything.
Okay. And that leaves you, JC. How'd you find it?
Yeah, so growing up as a little kid, we had a few books that were my dad's, and one of those was a very well-read copy of Revenge of the Babysat. And so, you know, at first I was like, this is weird, why is it in black and white? But I started reading it, and I think what's fascinating about Calvin and Hobbes that I don't think any other newspaper strip I've read really captured is, on the one hand, yeah, it's got satire, it's got comedy, it's got humor that adults can understand, but it also managed to just grab my imagination as a kid, like Jana was saying. And sometimes there were things where the jokes were going over my head. I didn't realize they were going over my head until I went back and read them later. But it didn't matter because there was this really cool adventure that Calvin and Hobbes were going on, or like when they were running away to the Yukon, or when every time Spaceman Stiff showed up on the screen, and I could really relate with like how much he detested school. That struck a chord with me because I hated school as a kid, and so not every joke was necessarily appreciable by a young child, but it really connected with me. And so as I grew older, my parents kept getting me different volumes. So Homicidal Cycle Jungle Cat was one of them. I got the authoritative Calvin and Hobbes. I don't have the full collection, but I have a lot of them, and they're definitely treasured books for me.
So I just looked, and it said the reason that he stopped making the Calvin and Hobbes strip is because he didn't want to feel like he was get burnt out, and he didn't want to feel like he was selling out, making them just to make them. He made them to teach messages and explore themes, and he felt like he had done everything he wanted to do with it, and going further would be not true to his artistic vision. And he was offered a lot of money to keep going, to make the merch, to do the thing. So I can respect that, because a lot of people would just take the money.
A lot of people
I wouldn't
have.
even blame them. I'm not like, that's not even a value judgment, but he was like, nope, this is what I believe, and this is what I'm going to do, and he did it. So
well, and there are a lot of people and companies who'll just run something beloved and straight into the ground without giving it a proper ending. Prime example, Doctor Who.
No. Yeah, let's not talk about Doctor Who.
We're focusing on happy thoughts and happy memories.
Yeah, happiness. Let's go back to the
very happy thoughts. But it makes me think that he probably was really wise to do that, because now we have this beautiful collection of Calvin and Hobbes, and it has an ending, and it's a perfect collection. You know, it's not the late years when he was phoning it in, and there's not the lesser books and the better books. And so, you know, he made the decision for his own reasons, but I think it had more repercussions than that. I think it was a really great idea.
Yeah, there are
You know,
some
to
series
involve-
where it's like, just, you know, ignore this season or this book or that book.
Right.
It doesn't
Mhm.
suck.
Yeah.
But otherwise,
Yeah.
so I can appreciate that. Why do you think it's so iconic that even, I mean, let's see, 1995. It's been a year or two. We're not going to do the math. We don't want to do the math since 1995, and yet people still read it and still enjoy it. What do you think makes it so timeless?
Well, we
Oh,
talked
because-
about. Oh, go ahead.
Well, because he's doing everything that Calvin does and thinks is something that everyone has done or thought at some point in their life. Even, you know, not even when they were children, when they're adults. And he figured out what was universal, and then he went with it.
Mhm.
And it wasn't tied to a time period. I mean, aside from what we were saying about how the telephone cord and the roller skates and some of the physical stuff, but everything sort of exists. And you notice that the interiors, the human made stuff is really very sketchy. There's not a lot to the interiors of Calvin's house except for his own room, but then the outside is so lavishly, beautifully illustrated. You know, the outdoors is just this wonderful, detailed environment. And so he didn't fall into the trap of, well, the way that we decorate our houses in 1990 is how it's always going to look. And so there really aren't a lot of things to jar you out of that universality, I think. Anyway, so that was what I was thinking about. Is just that it's timeless because it's universal.
And it totally engages with sense of wonder, because really, who among us did not think that as a kid, I really want to go and visit the dinosaurs before, you know, we thought about things. But he not only does the I'm going to go visit the dinosaurs, but he engages with the idea that the dinosaurs try to eat him back. And what do you do when that happens? And my husband always says the only thing you need to know about Calvin and Hobbes to know how awesome it is velociraptors and F-14s. And once you know that's all you need to know how wonderful it is. But it is that because it's all sense of wonder. The last comic that comes out is one where he runs out into the snow and he and Hobbes are talking and they say, it's a magical world out there, let's go exploring. So even though they ended with an invitation that says the world is this magical, wonderful place. And it always was for Calvin. No matter where he was, he made it magical and wonderful. If he was bored in class, he sent his brain somewhere else that was magical and wonderful. If the girl was giving him crap, he came up with something magical and wonderful. He made his world magical. And I think a lot of us, even if we can't do that all the time, we sure want to. And that's really, really ageless and a timeless thing. Even now, I want to send my brain away and say, nope, I'm not today. Not going to happen.
And I think a key point of that is that most of his panels ended with a punchline, but not all of them did. Sometimes he just played it straight. Calvin always played it straight, and the punchline was usually other people's reactions to how he was doing things. But not everything was necessarily played for gags. And sometimes it was very real. It was always very real, especially to Calvin. But I'm thinking of when they had their house broken into, and it was the mom and the dad talking at night. There was no punchline. There was no like, ha ha, this is funny. It was a very real, emotional moment for the parents because their sense of privacy and safety had been broken and it had been violated. And Bill didn't try to turn that into a Big Bang Theory, ha ha, it sucks to be you. It was real.
The raccoon story was that way too. And it was the,
Mhm.
we found this raccoon, and despite everything, the raccoon died, because that's what sometimes happens. But I did like that they helped. A lot of these were ways to help children and adults, for that matter, me as the adult, to help you through the idea of, well, this is how you process grief. That he held Hobbes and they cried, and he says, well, don't you ever go away. So that it was to say, how do we deal with grief? How do we deal with that sense of somebody's broken in and something has changed? So it was wonderful that he could hit some of those stories that had a lot more of that feel to them, and then take us back to Calvin pounding nails into the coffee table and his mom coming in and saying, what are you doing? And the look on his face that they managed to get with a cartoon, that is the, well, duh, of course I'm pounding nails into your coffee table. What do you think I'm doing? That was so lovely. It was just like, oh my gosh, that
Mhm.
kid.
They had one episode where Calvin took something apart, where the Calvin and Hobbes were taking something apart because they wanted to see what the inside looked like, and I got in trouble for that a few times as a kid. And then sometimes when you put it back together, they're just extra parts, and who knows where those went. My mom had to institute a rule that you were not allowed to take things apart if you did not know how to put them back together.
Good rule.
I might have caused them to have to take the vacuum and get professionally repaired because Dad was out to sea. Hypothetically, I mean, it could have been my sisters. Could have. So I think one of the things he understood, and I'm going to throw the picture of Bill Waters. I think Bill Waters, right?
Watterson.
There we go. He reminds me, if you watch his the few times he's online, very Mr. Rogers-esque vibes, down to the sweater. So he just comes off as wholesome. So I don't know. It worked. He had dad energy when he did those comics. Back to what you were saying, yeah, and the mustache, glorious mustache, and those Coke bottle glasses, circa 1980. But yeah, no, it just the wholesomeness of it, I think, is what makes it timeless. Because for a while, and sometimes you still see it, although there's pushback. There's this race to the bottom where it be as degenerate as you can be to be shocking, because you got to shock the audience. That's the goal, regardless of what it is. And the fact that people like this and it's the opposite of that shows that that's not necessarily always needed. So it's kind of nice to see the wholesome too. I mean, there's room for all of it, right? But to have something that you don't have to worry about, wait, can I listen to this with my kids around? Can I read this with my kids around? Can I read it with them, to them, right? Like that's one of the things that I like in Calvin and Hobbes.
Well, and that I've used that as so my daughter is going into middle school / junior high, and it's a big thing. And she came in the other night and she says, I'm overstimulated and overwhelmed and I don't know what to do. And I told her to go read comics until she fell asleep. And so she pulled out Calvin and Hobbes, and we've all read them a million times. She found her favorite place and she read for about 10 minutes and fell asleep. Because that's the place it takes you to, is a place where you can kind of let go of, I'm overstimulated, I'm overwhelmed, I hate everything. And I love that there are still research sources for that, and that I never have to worry about what is she going to encounter in these comics. Maybe some bad ideas, things that I might think are bad ideas, see the coffee table and the nails, but she's going to be inspired. She's going to be taught to reach for curiosity, and that school ends, and that bullies can be defeated, and all those things. They're all messages that I want her to have. And if that's what she falls asleep to, then all the more power to her. Same thing for me. Sometimes I reach for them when I've just had a no good, very bad day.
For me, it hits the same spot that the Archie Bunker comics did, because I read those as a kid too. It's just the simpler time, I think. And I think as the world gets faster, as the technology improves, sometimes it's nice to just go slow and take a moment to touch grass and breathe air. And I think it speaks to that human nature that is kind of antithetical to sometimes to some of the modern city living. But that could just be me overthinking, because I did take some English classes in college, and they overthink everything.
Yes, they do.
I resemble that. So does Melissa, so that's okay.
That's totally true. Been there.
So is there what you guys would view as a spiritual successor to the Calvin and Hobbes comics that's out now for young people?
No.
Well, Phoebe and her unicorn comes closest because she's got the same sensibility. It's not nearly as timeless, I think, because a lot of Dana Simpson's humor is rooted in modern technology, modern life, and juxtaposing that with the unicorn best friend that is all magical and fantasy. But it comes really close. It comes really close. But it's I think that comparing the two and expecting the one to be like Calvin and Hobbes and be exactly like is probably not good for that author. But yeah, Phoebe and her unicorn is a really clever little series. It's got the same young human person with a magical creature friend who most people can't see because unicorns are so fabulous. You would just spend all your time staring at it or something like that. But it's not nearly as it's also not a phenomenon like Calvin and Hobbes was.
No.
So it comes close.
Was it always a phenomenon, or is that something that came later? Because obviously we're looking at it in retrospect. I don't know how it was initially received.
It was huge.
Mhm.
Okay. Speaking as someone having read it from not really, I don't think I read it from the beginning because it had, the same slow start everything does when it's syndicated. But it was big. Everybody was reading Calvin and Hobbes. If you made a reference to something from Calvin and Hobbes, most people got what you were talking about. So yeah, I think it was pretty much always a phenomenon.
And big enough that by the middle he could make some demands on so he writes a whole thing about how the Sunday strip had to change because he was finding that he wanted to do things that couldn't work within what a syndicated Sunday strip wanted. And so he did get some of his demands met where he was able to make changes, and you have to be really bringing in a lot of money, really big hit to get the newspaper to say we're going to change that. And then it went a step beyond that where he was doing things that the papers wouldn't bend to, and that's where he really started pushing some of the collector's volumes and things like that, because the big wide shots and that kind of thing were not things that a lot of printing was set up to do. But that he could get any budge on the standard, you get this many slots and that's a pretty big sign that he was doing something right and he was making a lot of people a lot of money.
Hopefully himself too, because I know back in the day the artists didn't always get treated so nicely by publicators. So what about you, JC and Bill? Do you think there are spiritual successors out there? I mean, you're barely out of middle school yourself, Bill, so you might be able to answer this one. Do you think there are any spiritual successors to Calvin and Hobbes?
I'm going to ignore that comment, first of all. Second,
Yes.
There was one back when I still used Facebook. There was someone posting something that I'm not sure if I'd call it a spiritual successor, more so a bit of a ripoff with the art style, but at the same time, I'm not 100% sure. I also don't know how popular it was. I don't even remember what the thing was called, but it was that comic strip. It followed a girl like Phoebe and her unicorn did. But this girl had a handful of stuffed animals, and someone else may know what it is based on what I'm saying, but the art style was very much reminiscent of Bill Watterson's with Calvin and Hobbes, and a very similar premise. I would be surprised if the person behind that wasn't in some way inspired by Watterson's work.
Yeah, it's a fine line between homage and plagiarism and copying when it comes to some of these concepts. But
It is.
if it worked, it generally speaking works for a reason, and that speaks to more than one person. So, all right. Well, what about you, dear listener? We're hitting the hour, and I don't want to belabor the point. I think we hit the highlights. Is there anything you think, dear listener, leave in the comments, is a spiritual successor to Calvin and Hobbes?
I am actively searching, by the way, for a comic that I felt encapsulated if I cannot remember the name of the comic.
Try something like Grok or Google AI. A lot of times you can just describe it and it will find it. I have found books that I haven't touched since the 80s, and I just described the premise and it found the books for me. So I don't hate all AI because that in its like search function, perfect. Just don't make it write your book for you. Or Jana will come at you with her editor pen and stab you in the eye.
Okay.
Just do it. Do it good.
So, somebody wrote a couple of tribute comics that were like Hobbes and I can't remember the name, but it was Calvin's daughter, and she now had Hobbes, and Calvin was the adult, and they were so good, and it was a tribute. And he didn't do very many, or she. I don't know. I have no idea who it was, and I have no memory of the details, except that it felt so much like Calvin and Hobbes for like the next generation, and it was just sweet. It was, so I can't really call it a spiritual successor because it wasn't really its own thing. It wasn't really meant to be a replacement or anything, but those were really fun and maybe I will have to, what I'll do is I'll enlist my husband to ask his best friend Grok to find them for me.
There you go.
He is a big user of Grok to do research, to find stuff that he's forgotten.
Always a good thing. All right, so as we wrap this puppy up, Bill, what are you working on at the moment, and how might we find you on the wild interwebs?
Well, real quick, because it didn't come up again, and I started to say something about this.
Okay.
And maybe this was mentioned before. I got temporarily pulled away there for a couple minutes. But looking back at the Calvin and Hobbes stuff I've looked at here over the last few weeks, just in preparation because I knew I was going to be here, I think part of that timelessness really is just how it is about that childhood imagination. And as I was saying before, like a lot of good comedies, it touched on something that I think spiritually is very important, which is maintaining that inner child, making sure that the inner child doesn't die, because, well, if you let the inner child die, what's the point? What's the point in living if you can't see the wonder of the world? And I think Calvin and Hobbes really went into that, because Calvin is very much that rambunctious, very imaginative kid, but you're also, as you said, JC, you're getting everyone else's reactions to him as he does his thing. And one thing that I've heard from people who have kids is that there's an element of rediscovering that inner child that the parent lost somewhere along the way. Mm-hmm. And when you have this story about that's through the kid's eyes, because we're seeing what he sees, we're seeing his best imaginary friend in Hobbes, we're seeing him go on adventures as Spaceman Biff, but we're also getting that element of the adult being like, okay. And I don't know if I'm doing a good job of explaining it, but I just think it, much like actually having to deal with children, I think it just really gets into that headspace that it is very easy for a lot of people to forget along the way, but I have found is very, very important if one wants to not just be a depressed sack for his or her entire life.
Yeah.
But in terms of what I'm working on, I am continuing to work on my Zorn pulp, which can, like I said at the start of the show, can be found on Substack. I also have 2 actual books in the works. Neither of them are in any position to be released yet, but hopefully next year I'll start getting things on Amazon for people to read as well.
Okay. What about you, Melissa? We're just gonna go round robin. What are you writing at the moment? Because I'm sure you're like 12 books ahead of what you're actually publishing. Maybe 14. I don't know. Hard to keep track.
I wish.
She's like that.
So I'll be, as this airs, I'm still publishing the War Master series. It's working its way to the end, which has been completed and is just moving through the pipeline. But I am writing the Living Oracle series, which is a follow-up to my contemporary fantasy Last Oracle series. And this is the series where Fairy has been locked away for 1,000 years and slowly poisoned by something the humans did to keep the elves from entering our world. And now that the elves can come back, they're really pissed off. So it's a fun little difference. I don't write a ton of contemporary fantasy, but this ends up being my most popular series, The Last Oracle is, and that is interesting to me. So that's what I'm working on, is more of the Living Oracle.
Do you make jokes about somebody saying about the elves, don't make them angry, you won't like them when they're angry?
Her elves are scary.
The elves are terrifying. They're like Hellboy 2, Prince Nuala, scary, freaky, veiny elves. Because, they've been living in a land that's been tainted for 1,000 years and they kind of absorbed it. So they're freaky.
Well, I know I get into many discussions with friend of the show, Garrett, about this, but I generally think most elves as depicted are jerks, and I don't like them. They're pompous and ageist and speciesist, and I just don't like them.
I found after reading Terry Pratchett's Lords and Ladies that was kind of how I felt about elves, that I was not so interested in seeing them as wonderful elevated beings. I kind of like the idea of vicious monsters who have it in for humans. I just find that interesting.
I will say I do make an exception for the Keebler elves because I'm just saying.
Those are make cookies.
What about how they can find you on the Wild interwebs? And as usual, links will be in the show notes.
Right. My website is melissamcShaneWrites.com. I also have my storefront at nightharborpress.com, where you can buy ebooks, print books, and a few of the audiobooks. We're working on getting those up for sale as well. I'm on X, and I have a Facebook readers group. And I think that's it. And you can go to my website to sign up for my newsletter, which is released monthly, to keep updates, or you can follow me on Amazon and get new release information there as well.
Okay. JC, what are you working on at the moment? And then how can we stalk you on the Wild interwebs?
Yeah, so right now I am currently publishing a progression fantasy serial on Royal Road. And so that's what I'm currently working on. I've got other stuff that I'm working on in the background while I upload that. Once I've gotten far enough in the serial, I'll eventually stub it and move it to Amazon or something. That's still up in the air. You can find me on my website, jcthethird.com. It's written out. I'm also on Twitter, X, Twix, whatever you want to call it. And that's probably the best social media to follow me on. I believe fiction. I write about heroic characters doing heroic things. I believe fictional worlds should inspire wonder. Action should be bombastic. That romance should be diabetes from the overwhelming sweetness. So if that sounds like something you're interested in reading, you can check me out on my website. So
okay,
also,
and as usual, links will be in the show notes, and we will link to your Royal Road story so they can find that there. I don't think you need a membership or an account to read it, right? Like anybody can just read it?
No, so it's available for free on Royal Road. You don't need to sign up to read it, but it would be really awesome if you got a free account so that you could leave a rating and or review.
Hint.
Wink, wink,
All
nudge, nudge.
right, and finally, Jana and your many other personalities.
What am I working on? That's a good question. This will go out in September. So what I will be working on at that point is finishing up the Griffin anthology that I'm releasing through Opal Kingdom. We have just finished all of the edits, and so now we're into formatting and all sorts of neat stuff, and that will be coming out. That is the second Extraordinary Beast anthology. I'm collecting stories for the Gargoyles anthology, which I'm not sure when that one's coming out, October, I believe. I'd have to look at my schedule. Unlike Miss Chloe, I do not have everything scheduled out for the next 3 years, but I try to have it for at least a couple of months. So I am working on those. I have gotten kind of stymied on my urban fantasies, so right now I am poking at a science fiction romance to see if I can get the juices flowing again. And thus far, that's coming along well. So we'll see how that goes from there. And I can be found. Go ahead.
How many books do you have working at any one moment, given all your multiple personalities?
Usually around 4.
Does that drive you bonkers hopping between them?
It doesn't drive me bonkers, but from a trying to build up the kind of momentum that you want as an author point of view, it's not actually the best idea. So that's one of those things for those of our listeners. I know mostly we focus on readers and other nerds, but for those that also want to be writers, this is a thing that following your muse can get you in trouble because it doesn't allow you to build up the series so that you're getting the stamina within one series. And I finished up a series and I'm trying to get back into something else. And then my goal, as Melissa keeps telling me, is to say no to the other things and just stay put. I've just been fighting with this urban fantasy for a couple of months and I'm stuck hard. And so I'm going to let the back of my brain bubble on it while I work on something else. And then hopefully I can get back to that and finish that series.
I'm going to paraphrase our friend Marissa Wolf, and I'm going to say you have decided you are genre fluid now. You just go where the muse goes.
I've always been genre fluid, man.
All right, and I am still working on the Wargate thing. It's going slow. The research is killing me. I don't have my on-dial expert on all things Egyptian anymore. And I'm still working on the reboot stuff. We have paused a few times for short stories. So we wrote the main character's sister, who's also in this book. We wrote a short story about her kind of origin story that's going in the biological the cryptid anthology that the Bayonet Books is doing. And then we are probably going to do another one about how she learns to do her powers because it happens off screen. But in order to understand it ourselves, we will probably write that and just show it from her point of view, because the reboot series is all told from Atticus's point of view. And it is definitely interesting not writing a grunt because this guy's a cav officer. So it's been interesting, but I'm digging it. So we're having fun. I am on chapter I'm at 13 as we record this, but in 2 weeks I'll be up farther. At this rate, we will be on to book 2 before Christmas, having finished book 2 by Christmas, I imagine. So we expect if we're going to wait to publish, probably early 2026, you'll actually see these novels.
Hopefully.
Cool.
And I don't have to do any of the publishing because I'm just going to pass the buck and let Jana do all the hard work.
I can do that part.
I just type at the keyboards like a trained monkey. So this is the part, dear listener, where I bring this to a close and I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right books. So please do your part. It really does make a difference. And speaking of reviews, hop on over to Royal Roads and give him a review too. JC Chambers III. He would like you to share your thoughts on it and tell him how awesome he is. That never hurts anybody's feelings. And you can find us on our Linktree, linktr.ee. Linktree/Blasters and Blaze podcast, where we link to all the things: the Bitch Juice, the Rumble, the YouTube, the TikTok, the Twitters, the Spotify, the Discord, the Blasters and Blaze Facebook group and Facebook page. We have our email, blastersandblazepodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandblazepodcast@gmail.com for professional purposes only, people. Say the shenanigans from Stabby Stab on the Instagram, the Twitter, and the email. You can support the show by going to buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. These episodes aren't free to produce, and every penny you donate really does help keep the lights on. We're at that time of year where we're starting to look at funding the next year. So again, every penny helps. Or if you do donate through Buy Me Coffee, put in the comments that it's for the podcast. And I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee or hot chocolate until it pours out of their eyeballs. And then we just swim away in awesomeness, and we won't even care when we drown. If you want some of that coffee brand coffee awesomeness, the link is in the show notes. Discount code is podcast grunts. You get 10% off. We get a little bit of a kickback. It's a win-win. And we really do appreciate every one of you who contributes every year to keep this show running. And with that, I would like to thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters Blaze podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. Thank you all for coming on, everyone. And I'm sorry for the squeaking at the end. The puppy has discovered the chew toy. So that will be
nice. The puppy is cute. He's our mascot.
Yes, he has learned to walk, but he is like 10 pounds, but he thinks he's 100 because he tried to chase the ducks when I'm teaching him to walk, because we started walking now, where he'll go with me on the leash. And he tried to go after the ducks in this really big pit bull that was luckily just kind of looked at him like, what are you talking about, kid? Because he wants to just wrestle everything. So it's a weird phase where his ego is bigger than his body.
Oh.
So, and with that, we're going to hit the end button, people. And don't forget to leave a comment. Share this with your friends.